paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer.
You dig a hole, you put a seed in, you put dirt on top, add water, up comes the corn.
God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board. So God made a farmer.
1.98% of the world work in agriculture today. It's 2% in the United States.
God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs.
Put a seed in, you put dirt on top, add water, up comes the corn.
So God made a farmer.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to this brand new edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation today. I want to turn our attention to the Word of God to launch the program today. I want to mention right off the top that you can go to afr.net, and there you can find you can find podcasts of all of our programs. I want to encourage you to go there. If you missed the program, you can go to the podcast page at afr.net, click on the podcast button, scroll down to find the Focal Point logo, click on that. You can subscribe to it, get it every day, delivered right to your email address, and you can listen to the podcast at your leisure if you missed the program live. Also want to remind you, you can go to afa.net. That's our opinion page. I've got a column that's scheduled to be posted. I think it's probably up there by now, but it's a column on transgenderism and how transgenderism is turning homosexuals into bigots. Transgenderism, by definition, makes homosexuals bigots. And transgenders are saying that about homosexuals. They're bigots. Because you may have a lesbian, and she doesn't want to date a man who thinks that she's a woman. So they carve them out of their whole dating profile. Well, that's bigotry, according to the transgenders. The column is up at afa.net, looking at what science has to say about the issue of gender and sexuality. All right, well, let's turn our attention to the Word of God. Our reading has taken us to Psalm 17. By the way, I didn't identify myself. My name is Brian Fisher. I'm the host of Focal Point, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent.
As always.
Jeff and Rob in the house, three amigos bringing you the program today. Now, Psalm 17 is a psalm that was written by David and might be a situation that you've encountered where you have been treated unjustly. You've been treated unjustly. Accusations have been made about you that are not true. They're just plain false. Things that you have said have been taken completely out of context. They've been twisted. They've been distorted. You've been accused of saying things that you never said or things that you certainly did not mean. These take on a life of their own, and people begin to accuse you, criticize you, condemn you for these things that you never said or you never did. And David was in that situation. He was in that situation frequently. So he begins in Psalm 17 and says, Lord, attend to my cry. Give ear to my prayer from lips that are free of deceit. So David here is asking God to intervene on his behalf and vindicate him and bring him justice. And we see here that one of the first requirements that God has as a just judge, if we bring a complaint before him, we need to be sure that we are telling the truth. We can't be shading the truth. We can't be distorting what we bring to God in our complaint. We've got to be honest with him. We've got to be honest about our own mistakes, our own misdeeds, and bring that before God to ask him for vindication. Not going to vindicate us if we are acting in deceit ourselves. And so he pleads with God, from your presence, please let my vindication come. And he says in verse 3, Lord, you've tried my heart. I know that you search me. You know everything that's in my heart. You know everything that's in my mind. You have visited me by night. Now, if you've been in a situation where you're wrestling with this unjust accusation, it's tough to sleep. It'll keep you awake at night. And David says, in those night hours when I couldn't sleep because of these unjust things that were being done to me, you visited me. You reminded me of scriptures. You encouraged me. You reminded me that my lips need to speak truth. So David says, look, God, I've avoided the ways of the violent. I've paid careful attention to my steps. My steps have held fast to your paths. My feet have not slipped. So these accusations I've checked. I've examined my heart with your help. I've looked at it. And Lord, in this case, I'm not saying, Lord, that I'm innocent in every case. None of us can say that. But there are situations where we can say, I am innocent in this situation. I am innocent on this charge. My feet have not slipped from the path of righteousness in this particular case. And so we go to God and ask him for his vindication. And David's confident that God's going to hear him, God's going to answer him, and in verse 7, he's going to wondrously show his steadfast love. O Savior of those who seek refuge from their adversaries at your right hand. That's where the relief will come. That's where the refuge is found. That's where salvation from these false accusations come. It comes at the right hand of the Father. So his appeal in verse 8 is, keep me, he says, as the apple of your eye. Hide me in the shadow of your wings from the wicked who do me violence, my deadly enemies who surround me. You know, it may be in a situation where you feel like you've got absolutely no friends, absolutely no supporters, absolutely no one taking your side, defending you, coming to your aid. David says, welcome to the party. It's happened to me. It may just happen to be you. They close their hearts to pity. These may be people that you know, people that are in your family, people that are your friends, and they seem to have no compassion, no mercy for what you're dealing with, no mercy for the sense of injustice that's taking place in your case. And so David says, look, my appeal, Lord, is to you. When I don't have any human being to stand with me, no human being to stand up for me, I am counting upon you to be the one who protects me. And he uses an interesting word picture. He says to God, keep me as the apple of your eye. That phrase occurs in Scripture. It's a vivid one. Keep me as the apple of your eye. That is a figure of speech to refer to the pupil. Think about how you protect anything that's coming at your eyes. You put your arms up, you put your hands up. You'll do anything to block something that's coming at your eyes. That's the apple of your eye. You want to protect it. It's the key to your eyesight. And you just do it instinctively. And so David says, God, I'm counting upon you to instinctively protect me, protect the apple of your eye. I am the apple of your eye. You value me like I value my own eyesight. And I know, Father, you value me like that because I'm the apple of your eye. You will see the justice in my case. And I remember taking our family to a vacation back to Disneyland out in California. This is back when the kids were small. And they had a new attraction there in their 3D theater that was based on the movie Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I don't know if you saw that, about these kids that get shrunk down to little tiny people and the various adventures that they have. And so this whole little movie, this 3D movie that they had developed in this theater was premised on that movie. And there's one scene in this, and you got things flying over your head because it's surround. It's a surround theater, not surround sound, but surround vision theater. You got things behind you. You got things flying over your head. And in one scene in this movie, there was a guy that was riding some kind of a scooter that was airborne. And he was out of control. And he's out of control on this airborne scooter, and he crashes through this neon sign that's hanging right above everybody's heads in the theater. And that neon sign just shatters into little tiny shards that start flying all over the theater, and they started flying right at me. And instinctively, I put up my hand to block those invisible completely mythical, completely manufactured shards. Why? Because I was protecting the apple of my eye. So let's trust God. If you're in a situation like that where there's some injustice that's being done, trust God to protect you just like you guard your own eyesight. Well, let's go to prayer. Lord God, I pray that you will so work in our lives, my life, the lives of the listening audience of Focal Point and AFR Talk, that we will resolve that our mouths will not sin. By the word of your lips, may we keep ourselves from the ways of the violent. I pray that our steps will hold to your paths, that our feet will not slip. I ask that even if you were to probe our hearts and examine us at night, you would find nothing. When we are unfairly attacked or accused, I pray in Jesus' name that you will hear our righteous plea and listen to our cry. May our vindication come from you, as your eyes see what is right. I ask you to show us the wonder of your great love and save us by your right hand from those who assail us with false accusations. I ask you to keep us as the apple of your eye and to hide us in the shadow of your wings. When those around us close up callous hearts against us, and their mouths speak with arrogance against us, and they attack us like a lion hungry for prey, I pray that you will rise up and confront them and bring them down. Rescue us, I pray, from the wicked by your sword. Save us from the men of this world whose only reward is in this life. I pray that in righteousness we will see your face, and that when we awake we will be satisfied with seeing your likeness. Pray these things in your name. Amen. All right, want to welcome to our decision maker line a good friend of mine who is a legislator in the state of Washington. His name is Representative Matt Shea. You might have heard about him. If you look him up on Google, don't believe a thing you hear about him. Whatever you see, don't believe it. Instead, go to afa.net and look up the column that I've written about Matt that is an extensive review of the false accusations that are against him. Jeffrey?
And Brian, I just want to let you know, we're going to hold the break until you're done with him because he's has limited time here.
Okay. Yeah, Representative Shea is in the Washington State Legislature, and they're in the middle of voting on bills. In fact, Matt, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hey, Brian, thanks very much for having me on. It's an honor.
You bet. And tell me, when I talked to you earlier this morning, the legislature was getting ready to vote on a bill that I think had to do with magazines. Tell us about that, how the vote went. Give us an update.
Well, so far they haven't brought it up officially to the floor yet for a vote, but it's on the docket, and that's to ban high-capacity magazines in Washington State, effectively rendering any AR-15 useless. And this is just another step toward gun control. They've been really pushing gun control, not only in Virginia this year, which saw a victory for us, but they're pushing it in Washington State, and Washington has kind of flown under the radar on this issue. A lot of gun control bills have come forward this year, and we've been fighting for the last week on the floor of the House against them.
And we saw what happened in Virginia, where you actually had a bill to ban AR-15s and magazines of the size you're talking about, was actually defeated in committee because four Democrats voted against it. So do you think anything like that could happen in Washington? There's enough Democrats with sense, enough respect for the Second Amendment that they might actually vote against this bill that's coming to the floor?
Well, there are a couple Democrats that are opposed to the magazine ban, the so-called assault weapons ban, but largely they're for this. And despite the public outcry here in Washington State, where a couple thousand people have shown up here in Olympia against this, it looks like they want to try to drive this forward. And then there's also the lesser-known bills that have to do with the expansion of so-called red flag laws, which effectively seize firearms for minimal evidence. And in one case in Seattle, actually, they seized the firearms, or King County, they seized the firearms of an individual solely based on his beliefs. He had done no criminal activity. Now, that said, that's a precedent. We don't agree with the guy whose firearms are seized in his belief system, but it sets a precedent for the future. And so when you see the NRA being labeled a domestic terrorist organization in San Francisco. You see legislators and activists around the country being labeled domestic terrorists. They're trying to set up this situation where somebody that's been labeled a domestic terrorist can then have their firearms seized under these red flag laws. And that's really gone under the radar. There have been a couple bills already passed in regards to the expansion of red flag laws here in Washington State this year.
Representative Matt Shea, state representative in the state of Washington, is my guest. And Representative Shea, you went to bat for a veteran who had his guns in Idaho, a veteran in Idaho who had his guns seized on the basis of a red flag law like this. Tell us about that and what you did and what the result was.
Well, it was under the Obama administration, and I want to be very accurate with this whole thing because there was a lot of misinformation out there. This gentleman was a veteran, and he had a stroke, and they checked the box on the medical form that said that he was unable to handle his own finances as a result of the stroke. Well, because of that, under the Obama administration, there was a corollary policy that said if you can't handle your finances, then you also cannot possess firearms, which, of course, those two are related, not. And the issue then became that the VA was saying to him and making the impression very clear that he could not possess firearms. And so when a veteran service officer was coming to his house, there was a very peaceful protest to make it very clear that under no circumstances, would his firearms be seized. Now, the VSO was not coming there to seize his firearms. I want to be very clear about that, but was coming there to read a letter to him. But the VA made it plain that, under this Obama administration policy, that he was not able to possess firearms. So county sheriff and a couple state representatives and several other people were there to ensure that his right to bear arms was held intact. And a couple days after that situation, the VA doctor reversed course and unchecked the box, and so he was free and clear. But that should never even be on the table in America, especially for those that have honorably served our country.
And it shows the dangers of these red flag laws, ladies and gentlemen. They are a bad piece of business. Well, Matt, let me turn to the issue that I brought you on. I appreciate you staying over and we'll try to let you go as quick as we can here. But in the news today, there is a story about Eastern Oregon basically wanting to secede from the state of Oregon by moving the border of Idaho, which is my home state, moving the border of Idaho westward and occupy is the wrong word, but convert parts of the state of Oregon to become part of the state of Idaho. These people just totally fed up with the kind of politics in the Oregon State Legislature. They feel powerless because they're rural communities. They're outnumbered. So the folks in Portland and Eugene, they dominate the legislature. And so they just want to live in a jurisdiction which shares some kind of conservative values, respect for the Constitution, respect for the sanctity of life, respect for the Second Amendment, and all of that. So what's your reaction to this move in the state of Oregon?
It's fantastic. As you well know, and I'll let your listeners know, we have a movement in Washington State that is similar called Liberty State. And to give the constitutional basis for it quickly, Article 4, Section 3 of the United States Constitution allows for the merging or the splitting of states by a simple majority vote of both the State House and the State Senate and the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate. And it's only a simple majority vote, so this can happen very, very quickly. And the Founding Fathers really believe that a geographic bounded area should best represent the values, tradition, culture, and heritage of the folks that live there. And if that changed, they left this mechanism so that the representation could be better. And just like in eastern Washington, in eastern Oregon, the feeling and the sentiment is that in their case, Salem, in our case, Olympia, does not represent the values, tradition, culture, and heritage of that area of the state. And we can give many examples, but we just talked about one, red flag laws coming after honorably discharged veterans and saying they can't possess firearms with no due process, saying that people, because of their belief systems, can't own firearms or possess firearms, again, without real, true due process. The seizure of land by agencies, the attempt to impose climate change draconian regulations on rural areas of the state, the just complete evisceration of the idea of the sanctity of life, and the massive expansion of abortion, and forcing businesses against their conscience to have insurance policies that fund abortion, to our school systems and a lack of education choice. And we could keep going on and on and on. There just simply is a massive divergence in eastern Oregon and eastern Washington from the coastlines. And you know what? That's okay. And there's a mechanism to help resolve that conflict in a peaceful way and to better represent the folks at the local level. So why not try this? And in fact,
Representative Shea,
folks. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry I got to interrupt you. We've got a break coming up. We're going to extend it just a little bit, but finish your thought. I want you to get the last word in before I let you go.
Absolutely. So very quickly, with the coastlines getting the rural areas out of the way, they would be able to pursue their socialist programs in Seattle and pursue their socialist programs in Portland. And the rural areas of America could pursue free markets and freedom. And let's see, as the great experiment that Thomas Jefferson thought the states were, let's see which ends up being better.
Yep, Laboratory for Democracy. All right, my guest has been Representative Matt Shea. Also, Representative Shea, you're aware of this, the governor of West Virginia is inviting counties in the state of Virginia that are upset with their state legislature to consider becoming a part of the state of West Virginia. A lot of good stuff happening there in the direction of self-rule. Appreciate it, Representative Matt Shea, my guest. Thanks, Matt, for being with us. Have a great day.
Thank you. Blessings.
God bless you, Matt. We'll be right back. Stay with us. We appreciate Representative Shea sticking over beyond the break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. My last guest, Matt Shea, an example of muscular Christianity in the State House of the state of Washington. So again, I got a secession. It's not really a secession thing, because what the people in rural Oregon are saying, look, we can't move to Idaho, so we're just going to move Idaho to us. We're just going to bring the western border of Idaho so far into Oregon that we will be living in Idaho when it's all said and done. Idaho, one of the most conservative states in the nation. So this would be self-rule. This would be self-governance. As Representative Shea said, there's a provision for this very thing right in the Constitution itself. Just a majority vote in the Idaho state legislature, majority vote in the Oregon state legislature, which may or may not happen. But all it takes is a majority vote for this thing to happen. Congress signs off on it. You got a done deal. Like Representative Shea said, I would think that these liberal bastions, like the people that live in Western Oregon, Portland, Eugene, all that, they'd be glad to see these yahoos and these hicks and these rednecks and these ignoramuses. You'd think they would be delighted to see them head for the exits. Maybe they will in time. And then the conservatives can live in a jurisdiction where their values have an opportunity to be heard. Their values have an opportunity to be enacted into public policy. So it'll be fascinating to watch that happen in the state of Idaho. And again, as I mentioned, the governor of West Virginia, you got a lot of people in Virginia really upset with their legislature. They stopped a very draconian gun confiscation bill today, would ban the sale of AR-15s, any magazine holding more than 12 rounds, that kind of stuff. It was defeated by Democrats. This thing is so bad, there were even 4 Democrats that decided, no, this is just a bridge too far. I'm going to vote against this thing. And you got 100 counties. It's up to 100 now, I read this morning. 100 counties in Virginia have officially declared themselves sanctuary counties for the Second Amendment, where the sheriffs in those counties and the county councils in those counties have said, we are not going to obey laws that violate the Second Amendment just because they come from our state house. Constitution supersedes state law. We're not going to honor it. This is going to be a sanctuary county for the Second Amendment. 100 of those now in the state of Virginia. And so Governor Jim Justice of West Virginia says, look, we're people that respect the sanctity of life here in West Virginia. We respect the Second Amendment. You're fed up with what Virginia's doing to you. Come over and join us. Do the thing that the Constitution makes it possible for you to do, and encourage you to do that. And you know who stood with him to make that announcement was Jerry Falwell Jr., the president of Liberty University. He stood with the governor of West Virginia, inviting people to join the state of West Virginia. All right, so we'll see how all of that plays out. It'll be kind of fun. That'll be a fun thing to watch. But there's just a brewing movement of all this. I spent a little bit of time looking at this map of Greater Idaho. That would be the name of the state, Greater Idaho. Man, I love it. I love the parts that would be a part of Idaho under this deal. Might even be something that will convince me to move back there. Who knows? All right. Let's see what else we have to deal with today. Let me make one. Yeah, I got that taken care of, so we can keep going here.
Maybe you could move back there and become a potato farmer. That might help their chances of getting into Idaho.
Yeah, and if I needed any help with that, I would just have Michael Bloomberg tell me how to do it. In fact, let's grab that one, Rob, if we can. This is clip number 3. This is Michael Bloomberg. Said this at Oxford University talking about people that work in agriculture. In Idaho, I was surrounded by farmers, had farmers in my church. We grew potatoes. We even had potatoes on our license plate. We were so fond of farming and agriculture. Here's what Michael Bloomberg had to say about all that, clip 3.
I could teach anybody, even people in this room, so no offense intended, to be a farmer. It's a process. You dig a hole, you put a seed in, you put dirt on top, add water, up comes the corn. Then we had 300, you could learn that. Then you have 300 years of the Industrial Society. You put the piece of metal on the lathe, you turn the crank in the direction of the arrow, and you can have a job. And we created a lot of jobs. 98% of the world worked in agriculture. Today, it's 2% in the United States. Now comes the information economy. And the information economy is fundamentally different because it's built around replacing people with technology. And the skill sets that you have to learn are how to think and analyze. And that is a whole degree level different. You have to have a different skill set. You have to have a lot more gray matter.
Oh, man. Well, I guarantee you, if the Democrats don't beat him up in this primary over that, the Republicans will. Can you imagine anything more arrogant and more elitist and more snobbish and more out of touch than that? Saying that farmers that feed this country, in fact, American farmers feed the world. We produce more food than any other nation on the planet. Our farmers produce more food than we need so we can be the breadbasket for the rest of the world. And yet, Michael Bloomberg says these farmers, they don't have much gray matter. They don't have the skill set that's necessary. You got to be able to think and analyze to have a real job. So anyway, the stuff that Michael Bloomberg has said over the years is starting to come back to haunt him. In fact, we got another Michael Bloomberg. No. Let's do the Paul Harvey clip. This was actually from an automobile ad from a Super Bowl a number of years ago. But this is Paul Harvey talking about farmers, a slightly different take than Michael Bloomberg. Let's listen.
God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to get up before dawn, milk cows, work all day in the fields, milk cows again, eat supper, then go to town and stay past midnight at a meeting of the school board. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody willing to sit up all night with a newborn colt and watch it die, then dry his eyes and say, maybe next year. I need somebody who can shape an axe handle from a persimmon sprout, shoe a horse with a hunk of car tire, who can make harness out of hay, wire, feed sacks, and shoe scraps, who planting time and harvest season will finish his 40-hour week by Tuesday noon, and then painin' from tractor back put in another 72 hours. So God made a farmer. God said, I need somebody strong enough to clear trees and heave bales, yet gentle enough to yean lambs and wean pigs and tend the pink-combed pullets, who will stop his mower for an hour to splint the broken leg of a meadowlark. So God made a farmer. It had to be somebody who'd plow deep and straight and not cut corners, somebody to seed, weed, feed, breed, and rake and disc and plow and plant and tie the fleece and strain the milk, somebody who'd bale a family together with the soft, strong bonds of sharing, who would laugh and then sigh and then reply with smiling eyes when his son says that he wants to spend his life doing what Dad does. So God made a farmer.
So that is eloquent, and it pays the proper respect to people that work the soil so you and I can eat. And he thinks this thing doesn't require any analysis, doesn't require any thought. I've known farmers, I've talked to them, the kind of science that goes into how they irrigate their crops, how they plant their crops, how they rotate their crops. It is a science. Agriculture is a science. It's not something that any Dumbo can do, in contrast to what Michael Bloomberg says. All right, when we come back, we got more content. Focal Point American Family Radio. I'm Brian Fisher. Stick with us.
Here's Twyla Braze
listen to this, I am convinced that the battle for mankind's future must be waged and won in the public school classroom by teachers who correctly perceive that their role are to be the proselytizers of a new faith. And then here's Vladimir Lenin, whose socialist credentials are absolutely impeccable. He said this, give me 4 years to teach the children, and the seed I have sown will never be uprooted. So, the front line in the culture war really is what's going on in the classrooms of America. That's why that bill in Mississippi was so dangerous, where the government would insist that even homeschools have to use government-approved curriculum, even though they don't get $1 of taxpayer money. All right. Well, let's talk about what's going on in the Nevada caucuses and all that. I'm reading that things are going to be as bad in Nevada as they were in Iowa. Remember the catastrophe that we had in Iowa? Total, absolute, utter catastrophe. Same thing is happening in Nevada. Here's a piece from the Washington Post. I'll read you some pull quotes from this article. Campaigns, this is by Holly Bailey at the Washington Post. Campaigns in Nevada said they still have not gotten the party to offer even a basic explanation of how key parts of the process, tabulating votes, will work. Volunteers are reporting problems with the technology that's been deployed at the last minute to make the vote count smoother. Experts are raising serious questions about an app the party has been feverishly assembling to replace the one they scrapped after the meltdown in Iowa. The problem is the company that's making this new improved app and making it on the fly, which is an absolute flat-out guarantee it's going to be riddled with errors. Same company that made the app in Iowa. And the Democrats and the Democratic National Party, they're connected at the hip with the company that made these apps. In fact, the Democratic National Party is as responsible for the meltdown in Iowa as anybody on the planet. They're trying to shift all the blame to the Democratic Party in Iowa, but the Democratic National Committee was hip deep in all the decisions that went into that and the formulating of that app. So now the same company is trying to come up with some kind of last-minute fix in Nevada. Doesn't look like it's going to work. One of the candidate's aides said it looks like the state party is making it up as they go along. And you've got more complexity in the Nevada caucuses than you did in Iowa, because Nevadans can vote early. So you got to collect those votes. You got to be able to register those with whoever's counting the votes. And when people vote in Nevada by ballot, they can rank their top presidential choices on a paper ballot. So if their first guy doesn't get it, then the votes go to the second guy. Who's going to collect that information? How's that information going to be sent to headquarters? On Saturday, caucus day, Democrats can gather at one of about 2,000 sites to vote for their preferred candidate. So that means there's 2,000 different places where things can go completely haywire. If their first choice doesn't get enough backing, according to the Washington Post, voters can throw their support behind someone else, a second round of voting. Now, the party had planned to use 2 specially designed apps for reporting results developed by the political technology firm Shadow. Now, one of the candidates, do you remember, Jeff, which one of the candidates is connected? One of the candidates, his or her wife, works for this Shadow company.
Buttigieg.
What's that?
I thought it was Buttigieg.
Yeah, maybe it's Buttigieg. He's got a relative maybe that's part of this company.
I don't know.
It's called Shadow, but they're the ones that designed that boondoggle of an app in Iowa. Same company being trusted to provide some kind of secure way to tabulate votes in Nevada, despite the fact that it's infinitely more complex than what they were trying to do in Iowa. And people that are responsible to run these caucuses, they're finding out about how the votes are going to be collected. They're finding that out from the media before they find out about it from the state Democratic Party or from the DNC. So they're playing catch up, and they're trusting the media to tell them how this is supposed to work. So the DNC, in my mind, now stands for the Does Not Compute Party, or the Discombobulated National Chaos Party. So they're trying to get answers from the DNC. Nobody's answering the phones. Nobody will tell them. And here's another deal. Even Google is enmeshed in the middle of this. Nevada officials have said, still reading from the Washington Post article, said they plan to use a Google-based form pre-installed on party-purchased iPads. Remember, they tried to use iPads in Iowa. People were using these iPads that had never operated an iPad before in their life. And they wonder why things went wrong. Same thing going to be happening in Nevada. Putting everything on iPads. Use these iPads to register voters when they arrive during early voting. These voters will then be given a paper ballot to rank their candidate choices. These ballots will be verified and scanned at processing centers before they are somehow, nobody knows how, transmitted to precincts for the in-person caucuses. On caucus night, caucus administrators will access the early vote data. Exactly where and how, we're not told, but they're going to do it through this Google Forms-based web application. Some technical aspects, the WAPO says, of how the iPad software will work are unclear. So you imagine if the person that's writing this article, who I presume is a reasonably intelligent individual, if she can't figure out how the iPad software is going to work, how is an ordinary American that's never worked with Google, how are they going to figure it out?
Maybe they need to just dig a hole, put a seed in it, and water it. You know?
Yeah, put a little
that
iPad
gray
seed
matter
in there.
isn't filling out so well for them.
Yeah, plant a little gray matter. You don't have very much of it, but what you have, you can spare just a little bit. Put it in the hole and see what happens. The iPads will be connected to the internet using cellular and Wi-Fi connections. And Jeff, you and I know about this because we communicate during the program on iPads, on FaceTime on iPads. I'm talking to you right now on an iPad FaceTime. We can't always connect.
Yeah, and we don't know why.
And we don't even know why the connection doesn't work. So this is just going to be hilarious to watch. And the Google Forms, these forms are limited in how they can be customized. So making the software perform the complicated task of folding the early vote tallies into caucus night results, I'm not seeing it. So we could be in for a second colossal, earth-shattering meltdown in the state of Nevada. Now, Bernie is still up by 12% nationwide. This is the latest poll, National Public Radio, Marist, PBS NewsHour poll, released just this morning, shows Sanders is at 31%. You know, Bernie did a rally last night here in the Washington area, Northwest Washington, in Tacoma, had 17,000 people at the Tacoma Dome. Those are Donald Trump type numbers. The only one on the Democrat side that can draw the crowds that Donald Trump can draw is Bernie Sanders. Nobody else can do it, and he did last night. And he's now got 31% of the vote in this poll from NPR. Let's drop down to clip number 11. You're having violence breaking out at these Bernie Sanders rallies, and there was some last night. Had a big fight. Guy was wearing a Black Guns Matter shirt. He was an African-American guy. Black Guns Matter. He wants to protect Second Amendment rights for African-Americans. He got jumped by a Bernie Sanders supporter, and they started duking it out right underneath the stage, right underneath the platform where Bernie was trying to talk. So let's play clip number 11. Listen to Chuck Todd talking about Bernie's followers.
I want to bring up something that Jonathan last put in the bulwark today, and it was about how in Ruth we've all been on the receiving end of the Bernie online brigade. And here's what he says. He says, no other candidate has anything like this sort of digital brown shirt brigade. I mean, except for Donald Trump. The question no one is asking is this: what if you can't win the presidency without an online mob? What if we now live in a world where having a bullying agro-social media army running around, popping anyone who sticks their head up is either an important ingredient for or a critical marker of success?
Wow. Okay, that's
I know everybody's freaking out about this, but you saw the MAGA rally that's preparing around here. There are people coming from 3 or 4 states on that. That's real, and this is like Bernie.
All right. So Bernie has online thugs, and right now it's just online, but I will guarantee you, I'm not a prophet nor the son of the prophet, but if Bernie gets gypped again, you are going to have, I don't know what you're going to have. You're going to have chaos. You definitely are going to have violence. You're going to have civil unrest. You're going to see Democratic National Party offices being firebombed with Molotov cocktails. I mean, Bernie's bros, these guys are a brown shirt brigade. I mean, they will take on an African-American who's standing up for the Second Amendment and try to pummel him half out of his mind. Imagine what they're going to do if their guy gets cheated again. And trust me, the Democrats are hard at work trying to figure out how they're going to rob Bernie Sanders a second time of the nomination and give it to the candidate of their choice, which I believe is turning out to be Michael Bloomberg. But anyway, Sanders is at 31%. Bloomberg is 12 points behind at 19. Then you have Joe Biden with 15, Elizabeth Warren with 12, and Pete Buttigieg is down in 6th place with 8%. So Pete Buttigieg is just not going to get traction. His campaign is just not going to go anywhere. I tell you, America is not ready for a president who kisses his male partner on the lips on the debate stage and may run drag queen story hours right out of the White House. All right, one more Bloomberg clip. Let's go to clip number 5. This is what Michael Bloomberg wants to do for health care. Clip 5.
You show up with prostate cancer and you're 95 years old. We should say, go and enjoy, have a nice meal, lead a long life. There's no cure, and you can't do anything. If you're a young person, we should do something about it. Society's not willing to do that yet.
Society is not willing. So he's saying, look, you show up with prostate cancer, and whatever the age is, the person he's talking about, hypothetical person, is 95 years old, but it could be somebody younger, could be somebody like me, saying you've had 69 years, you've had a nice long run, time to vacate the stage and hand it over to somebody else. Got a scholar in the UK saying the best thing that could happen to the earth is for all the human beings to die off. That's it for today. Bow low before God, stand tall before man, stand in the gap, and never forget we are fighting a winnable war. See you tomorrow.